Welcome back, everybody. Today I'm going to be installing the Etaker F-1000. This device lets you pull up to 500 watts power from your alternator, 300, 400, or 500, and at the same time allows you to pull up to 500 watts from solar panel. So you can theoretically, under ideal conditions with the right equipment, you could pull 1,000 watts per hour to keep your power station charged with this thing. This is huge. So let's take a look at what comes in the box real quick, and then we'll get this thing installed and test it out. So the unit itself is fairly heavy. It's nice. It's got all these cooling fins all over the place. It's got a fan that goes through, on-off switch, output that goes to the power station, car input from the battery, solar input from your solar panel, and then this button you can select between 300, 400, 500 watts. And you can turn on and off the vibration detection, which will make it so that it's not pulling power from your starter battery while you're not driving. It comes with a little loom for the power cable here, which is pretty long. I haven't measured it, but it's pretty darn long. Definitely going to be long enough for my, my 4Runner. Comes with a 50 amp fuse. We've got some nylon loom and an XT60 power cable to go from the unit to your power station. If your unit does not have an XT60 connector, no problem. They make all kinds of adapters here. So this just plugs right in, and then this will go straight into my power station. If yours has a different type of input, like I said, no worries. You can get an adapter. So it comes with an instruction manual. We've got a 1-year warranty. The DC out from this thing is 42 volts. So you need to make sure that your power station can accept that. And also look at the total wattage and the amps going in. You can use both to determine how much power you need. Mine has a maximum of 10 amps and 500 watts, so I won't be able to use the full 1,000 watts from this thing, but I need probably at least a 550 watt solar panel on ideal conditions anyway. So let's get this thing installed and test it out. I think that this is going to blow everything else out of the water. I'm really excited about this. I couldn't stop thinking about it while this thing was out in repair. I finally just got it back, so let's do this. Okay, so every vehicle is a little bit different. My battery is under the hood on mine, and I have the perfect spot through the firewall right back there to run the wires through. So I'll just run them through here, hook them up here and here on the battery, and then we'll go inside and hook them up to the power station and test this thing out. I'm excited. Okay, we were up here at the driver's seat area. I keep my power station right behind the driver's seat, so I'm gonna run these battery cables under here. There's almost always a channel under this part where you can run wires, and then we'll run them up here through the firewall up through the other end. So to get these off, you know, sometimes they just pop right off. You can get special plastic pry tools, or you can just take a flathead and put a bunch of blue tape on it. It might be best to get a plastic trim tool, and there's usually another piece right here at the kick panel that you can just kind of pop off, and it'll probably help to pull out this floor mat. So I'm gonna grab these power cables. I'll grab both ends. Let's see if I can find them. There we go. I'll run them right through here. You definitely want a nice, clean insulation. So I got them both through. Here's the ground. And I'm gonna run these wires the way I want them. And actually, I'm gonna throw that, that loom that they gave us on here. Because I don't want these wires, if these rub up against something metal, let me turn that off. If these rub up against something metal, it could wear the insulation off of them, and you definitely don't want to do that. So let's open this up a little bit. We'll get the power cable in. Pinch, push, pull. Cool. So that's easy enough. So the next step here is to hook this up, and we're going to hook up the positive cable to the fuse that came with. This is a 50 amp fuse, 8-gauge wire. And the way we're going to do that is hook this end up to the positive battery terminal. Now on mine, I've got these perfect posts coming out to hook this up. The issue is this is too small. So this is going to be really easy to fix with very basic hand tools. I'm going to show you how to do it right now. Woo! There we go. Okay, so now we have the old connector cut off. I twisted the ends nice and tight. I took a little piece of heat shrink, which you can get from Harbor Freight, any auto store, hardware store, Amazon, whatever. Really cheap and easy to get. And I've got an appropriately sized connector. This is cut about the same length as the connector here, so I'm just gonna set this on. And then you can get a pair of these from Harbor Freight, wherever, anywhere. And I'm just gonna crimp this, this connector on. It's real easy to do, and I'll show you how to check your work to make sure you're doing it right, because you need to get this right. This needs to This needs to be secure. So this is not my favorite crimping tool, especially for this size wire, but you can totally do it and do it cheap. That's the whole point. That looks good. So now we've got it on there. We're gonna grab this end and grab this end and pull and make sure that it's nice and tight, and it is. So then I'm just gonna slide up my heat shrink, which is slightly too small. You just hold the flame underneath and you can see the stuff shrinking pretty fast right before your eyes. There we go. And I was maybe a little close to it. Best to do this with a heat gun. And if you notice here, I went over a little bit, so I'll just pull that down. That'll be okay. All right, next step is to hook everything up. So I'm gonna disconnect my negative battery terminal just in case I cross something somewhere along the line. I've got to reset my clock for daylight savings anyway. So I'm gonna disconnect the negative battery terminal and then hook this onto the positive. There we go, negative is fully disconnected, and I think this one's actually a different size. Yeah, that one's a 13. So when you disconnect the battery, negative terminal always comes off first. That completely disables the entire electrical system. That way you will not touch the wrong thing. Obviously, you know, basic battery safety, you don't want to touch something metal to both poles on a battery. You want to make sure that you don't do that, because you will short the battery very quickly. So here we go. Here's the nut off the positive side, and we're just going to set this on here just like this. And different vehicles, you know, in a fuse box, sometimes they have a post where you can attach accessories to. Chevy vans usually have that. I know my Astro and my Express van did. So I'm just going to hold these wires down in place while I tighten this up. Okay, so on the fuse holder, we've got an 8mm. So I'm going to bust the nut off this guy real quick. And there is a lock washer and a normal washer on there as well, and I'm going to take those off. And as you can see on the bottom of this plastic is what's holding this nut straight, so we're going to want to be careful with our torque values on this. And then this just sits on there nice and straight. Then we'll put on the nut, or the washer, I'm sorry, and then the lock washer. And then we can tighten down this little nut. So the fuse holder did come with a topper on it, which is good because it keeps all those contacts isolated. So we're going to connect that just like that. And then I'm going to pull the ground one through a little bit. And that's also not going to fit. Does it fit on this one? Probably. So maybe I will take the ground of this one. I've got a lot of stuff going on right here. I need to get a bus bar. And if you're going to do this ground in particular, pull the whole thing out and take a look at the mounting surface and make sure it's nice and shiny metal. If it's not, I would totally recommend sanding this. This is a lot of power going through this thing. You want it to be a good ground contact. So I just sanded under this thing not too long ago and it still looks good. So I'm going to leave it as is. And I'm going to tighten this down. Okay, now I'm going to pull these wires through, get them nice and tight. And by the way, when I pulled off this trim piece right here, this is the appropriate tool. Something like this that's plastic so you won't scratch your metal. So these can just hang out back here. Just like that. That looks good. And then I just want to check everything else under here, make sure that these wires aren't rubbing on something and gonna chafe loose or something. Okay, so now is a really good time to go and double check your work. Make sure you did everything right. There's no issues. Everything's nice and tight, hooked up right, everything. So we're gonna take, and this is impossible to mess up because this is a different connector for the battery than any of the other ones. So I'm gonna plug the power in, and I've got the switch turned off, and I already reconnected my ground wire, so it just lit up to let me know that it works. And then I'm gonna plug in my output and then plug in the other end of the power station. Perfect. So that's all hooked up right. Okay. So I feel good about this. Let's turn on the switch and nothing happens. So let me turn it on real quick. There we go. It's lighting up. Okay. So I think what just happened is it took a second to read to register that the vehicle's running, and that's good because that means that the alternator can charge up the starting battery. Now it's on 300 watts. So we're pulling in 257, 292, 306, 310. Wow. Okay, this is still cold, so let's turn this up to 400. So you hold down this until it blinks, hit it again. Now we're on 400 watts. So we got 325, 386. Wow, I've never seen this much power go into this power station before. This is amazing. So we're not quite 400, we're at like 382, which is, oh, 405. We did hit 400. And this is still nice and cool. 405. Okay, let's try 500. There's 500. So we're at, oh, I turned it off, timed out. 406. Wow. 406 watts. It's on the 500 setting. I have a feeling that my alternator just cannot put out 500 watts, but let's leave it on for a minute, see what happens. So I turned it back to 300 because I think that's a safer load to put in this power station that has a 500 watt limit. So let's turn off the Forerunner and see what happens. Does it stop immediately? And it looks like it is. It's winding down. That's probably residual energy that was already in the unit. But it's definitely winding down. Okay, so I've got this thing plugged into the solar panel. I've been messing around, seeing how much charge I can get out of it. Looks like I'm getting about 65 watts today. You know, it's getting into fall. It's really hazy today. And this solar panel, this blanket that I have isn't the best anyway, so that's expected. So I would say the solar controller is working as it should. The max I can get out of this thing in combination with the solar and the unit is 405 watts. And the reason for that is that my power station's max is 60 volts. It's max 500 watts and 10 amps, and I'm not able to hit that 60 volts to maximize the watts. So I'm limited by the voltage on mine to 405 watts, which is still double what I was getting before. And this thing I think is retailing for, what is it, like 230 bucks, 260 bucks, something like that. So huge improvement for me, massive improvement. The other thing I'll say is it never got hot. My the input cable in my power station never got hot. It got slightly warm. I drove for I think a half an hour, 40 minutes total, and no problems there. It hasn't had any false the vibration control. One of the things I was kind of worried about, am I going to have a bunch of false things if I'm opening and closing doors while I'm out camp for days, moving stuff around? Haven't had an issue. It needs one little shake or one little like burst isn't going to set it off. It needs like steady vibration like an engine running. Hey guys, I gotta interrupt the video real quick. So I've had this a few more days, I've been testing it out, and I was able to set off the vibration detection falsely one time. I tried mounting it this way, I tried mounting it this way, I tried tapping on it, I tried turning up music real loud, seeing if that would set it off. Wasn't able to, but the one time I was kind of funny. I actually parked in my parents' garage and ran the washing machine to wash a load of clothes, and the sympathetic vibration from that did trigger this thing, and it charged my Bluetti from 80 to 100. So that was interesting. But other than that, that is the one knock I'll give this. This should have a trigger wire. You should be able to, you know, attach a trigger wire so this thing doesn't falsely go off. Another thing that they could do to prevent that is do more with the algorithm inside where the voltages need to be, you know, over 12.6, I think, or 12.5 is the trigger. It should be higher than that. It should be like 13 something. I'm not exactly sure what, but there's more things they could do to prevent a false trigger, and that would make this thing perfect. Let's get back to the regular review. So that's awesome. Everything works as it should. Who is this for? This is for anybody with a single input power station. If you've got a dual, you don't really need this. But at the same time, the EcoFlow is 800 watts, and that is a lot of juice, dude. Most alternators are not going to be able to put that out. So you're going to either need a high performance alternator or a second alternator in most cases to get even close to 800 watts. This vehicle has a 130 amp smart alternator, and I definitely wouldn't be able to use that full 800 watts, even if I did have a power station that could accept it. So at the price point this is at, I think it's around 350 bucks. Totally worth it. This is, in my opinion, the best thing on the market for most power stations. To be able to combine solar with the fast alternator charging, have a well-built, well-working device that is refined and polished and ready for the market. I think this thing's excellent. I definitely recommend this to anybody with a power station. This will not work to charge your, you know, just standard lithium batteries. The voltage is way too high. So make sure that you can utilize this thing. Make sure you got at least 500 watts. And I would say this is good to go. Definitely recommend it. Thanks for watching, everybody.